Good morning, everyone. Morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 19, 2025 governance meeting. The time is 9:04. We're going to be starting in a few minutes. I'll come back in about 5 minutes. We're waiting for one more person to get here. So we'll be starting shortly. Thank you.
I see him walking in.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the September 19, 2025 governance meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order at 9:07 a.m. We'll quickly do roll call. Leslie Reckler here.
Dimitri Masas-Hoy here.
Moving on to number 2, land, labor, and body acknowledgement. We recognize that we are presently on the lands of the Chochenyo, Muwekma, Karkin, Ohlone peoples and acknowledge them as the first inhabitants of the land we currently occupy. Labor and body recognition. I acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic justice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. I remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. I also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today of all immigrant labor, including voluntary and involuntary traffic forced and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. Author, Dr. Rochelle Rogers R. Moving now to number 2, public comment. Public will have the opportunity to make public comment. Hold your comments to about 2 minutes. Do we have any public comment this morning?
There's no one online.
No one online. We have a chance again to comment after items. Okay. To number 3, discussion and action items. First is review of board policy 9310, which is called board policies. And I included this since we have new members on the team. And we actually have a board policy that talks about how to make board policy. And in an effort to be a more policy-driven organization, the board's policy handbook does need some updating, but we actually have a lot written on a lot of things. And, I try to make use of it. And so I want to encourage others to do that as well. And I actually found it. I didn't even really know it existed, and I thought it would be a good idea to read it. And then if you're wondering how the district does business or what's written, the search is actually pretty good. You can put in a search term and it will bring up a lot of stuff. And so this is actually a little bit educational, that not only can you search our policies, but you can put it in a broader search and you can search a lot of other districts that use this particular software. So it's a little bit educational, but I thought that we would just review what's in there. So we do have a policy, it's 9310, on how the board actually makes policy. The governing board shall adopt written policies to convey its expectations for actions that will be taken in the district, clarify roles and responsibilities of the board and superintendent, and communicate board philosophy and positions to the students, staff, parents, guardians, and the community. Board policies are binding on the district to the extent that they do not conflict with federal or state law and consist with the district's collective bargaining agreements. The board recognizes the importance of maintaining a policy manual that's up to date and reflects. It's hard. I just want to say it's hard, but we're going to give it our best shot. Reflects the mandates of law. Policies shall be regularly reviewed at a time allocated for this purpose on the agenda of public board meetings. The board shall review certain policies annually as required by Ed Code 35160.5. If no revisions are deemed necessary, the board minutes shall nevertheless indicate that a review was conducted. Other policies shall be monitored and reviewed no less frequently than every 3 years. That's a huge undertaking. Policy development and adoption process. The district's policy development process shall include the following basic steps. The board and or superintendent or designee shall identify the need for a new policy or revision of an existing policy. The need may arise from a change in law, a new district vision or goal, educational research or trends, or a change in the superintendency or board membership. The need may also occur as a result of an incident that has arisen in the district or a recommendation or request from staff or other interested persons. As needed, the superintendent or designee shall gather fiscal and other data, staff and public input related district policies, sample policies from other organizations or agencies, and other useful information to fully inform the board about the issue. The board may hold discussions during a board meeting to gain an understanding of the issue and provide initial direction to the superintendent or designee. The discussion may include, but not be limited to, how the proposed policy may affect student learning, community expectations, staff recommendations, fiscal impact, as well as the policy's impact on governance and operational efficiency. The board or superintendent may request that legal counsel review the draft policy as appropriate. The superintendent or designee shall develop and present for a first reading at a public board meeting a draft for each new policy and for each proposed amendment to an existing policy. At the second reading of each new policy or proposed amendment to an existing policy, the board may take action on the proposed policy amendment. The board may waive the second reading or may require an additional reading if necessary. Only policies formally adopted by a majority vote of the board shall constitute official board policy. The district's policy development process may be revised or expanded as needed based on the issue being considered, the need for more information, or provide greater opportunities for consultation and public input. Policies shall become effective upon board adoption or at a future date designed by the board at the time of adoption. Board bylaws. The board shall prescribe and enforce rules for its own government consistent with state law and regulation. The bylaws governing board operations may be developed, adopted, and amended following the same procedures as those used for the adoption or amendment of board policy. Administrative regulations. The superintendent or designee shall be responsible for developing and enforcing administrative regulations for the operation of the district. Administrative regulations shall be consistent with law and board policy and shall be designed to promote the achievement of district goals and objectives. Administrative regulations may describe specific actions to be taken, roles and responsibilities of staff, timelines, and or other necessary provisions. The superintendent or designee may also develop procedural manuals, handbooks, and other guides to carry out the intent of board policy. When board policies are amended, the superintendent or designee shall review corresponding regulations to ensure that they conform to the intent of the revised policy. In case of conflict between administrative regulation and board policy, policy shall prevail. The board may review and approve regulations for the purpose of ensuring conformity with the intent of board policy. Monitoring and evaluation. At the time a policy is adopted, the board and superintendent or designee shall determine whether an evaluation of the policy should be scheduled, and if so, shall agree upon a timeline and measures for evaluating the effectiveness of the policy in achieving its purpose. Access to policies. The superintendent or designee shall ensure that all district employees and the public have access to an up-to-date district policy manual. A public copy of the policy manual shall be maintained at the district central office and at each school site. These copies shall be maintained either electronically or by paper. As necessary, the superintendent or designee shall notify staff, parents, guardians, students, and other stakeholders whenever a policy that affects them is adopted or revised. She may determine the appropriate communications strategy depending on the issue. Suspension of policies. No board policy, bylaw, or administrative regulation or any portion thereof shall be operative if found to be in conflict with applicable federal or state law or regulations or court decisions. If any portion of a policy is found to be invalid, that invalidity shall not affect other provisions of the policy. Any questions or comments? I found it. I just thought it was important to guide the work, and
I have a comment. So typically, whenever our office is reviewing board policies and administrative regulations, it's typical for board policies to be approved by the board and then regulations to go through the superintendent's cabinet.
yep.
That goes with this. Yeah.
Anything else?
Want to take public comment? or something?
Public comment?
There's no public comment online.
Any additional comments? Yeah, I don't have any. I found it. I thought it was important to ground the work. That's it. And, oh,
I'm sorry, something just came to mind. Frequently, resolutions will come through this governing body, and the policy didn't speak to resolutions. So I just wanted to lift that up and see if that's a concern.
and I agree with that, and I did do some research on resolutions,
Mhm.
and we have nothing, and I also went out and did a search of other districts,
Mhm.
and I think, can't remember if it's Oakland or LAUSD, like, if I'm looking for something, I'll go to LAUSD first, because I feel like they really have themselves buttoned down,
Mhm.
and there really isn't a lot, but I do agree that there should be some thought that defines that there should be policy on resolutions. This is what it means. This is how to get brought forward. These are the actions that, you know, how they're created, how to enforce. So I do actually agree with that. And LAUSD does have some things that are interesting, but they didn't have exactly what I was thinking of. But I agree with that. Put it on our list. Okay. We'll go to number 2, update on the services offered by CSBA. Prioritizing policies for review.
She's on.
She is on.
Yeah.
Great.
So
So,
make her panelist.
yes, please. We've invited Virginia Shedd from CSBA to join our conversation today. We did go ahead and do a policy review. And she'll share out some of the findings from the policy review and recommendations of next steps. But we'll just kind of give us an update on where we stand. So Virginia, are you there?
Just unmute.
Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Rosa, can you-
Okay, great. It's good to see everyone. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Virginia Shedd from CSBA. I'm a policy consultant, and the district recently did a policy manual review. So this is a very sort of surface level review. And with that, the only thing that we do is compare the adoption dates of the policies that are currently in your policy manual with the most recent updates that CSBA has done with our writers and legal team to our sample policies. We do update packets quarterly, and then we do special update packets to certain policies and regulations. For instance, due to a big law change or the outcome of litigation or something like that. So when we are updating policies, we're updating them so that they are legally compliant. So if there's a change in Ed Code or California law or federal law or something like that, that's the reason that we typically would update or change language. And then occasionally we will add a policy. For instance, we just added one on artificial intelligence, which isn't related to a law, but it's something that some districts are adopting. So just to give you kind of an understanding of what these numbers that I'm going to share mean. We found that overall, when we look at again, not content, only adoption dates versus our updated dates for the policies, that the district is a little bit more than 70% out of compliance. When I say out of compliance, the only thing that means is that we have updated about 70% of the policies since you have adopted them. So there could be some small language changes in there, or some of them could have to do with laws. Sort of the bigger thing that we found is we took a closer look at mandated and conditionally mandated policies. So these are policies and regulations that are mandatory for every district in the state and some of them nationwide to have in their policy manuals. Many of them deal with really heavily Ed Code, things like Title IX, things like that. So what we did find when we focus only on the mandated and conditionally mandated policies, were that overall, about, let me see, 70% of the district's mandated policies were out of date. Of the mandated policies that the district has adopted, about 42% of them are out of date. So if they're mandated and they're out of date, that's going to mean that they're legally out of compliance. So that means like over time since the district adopted them, some law or regulation has changed or a court case was passed that means legally we need to update these specific policies. The other thing we found was that out of the, I think we have about 170 or 150 policies that are mandated. And when I say we, I don't mean CSBA, I mean that they're legally mandated. About 36% of them are not in your manual at all. So this is where when we look at this review, this is good information because it's giving us a place to start. Right? When we're talking about adopting policies or updating them, this is where we're going to start. So there are obviously too many for me to name, but we do have a physical report that has been shared with you. Things that are missing or out of date are things like a comprehensive local plan for special education, things that deal with facilities like leaseback contracts. And these are again mandated and either out of date or missing. Some non-discrimination in employment, which would apply to 3 different classes of employee. So that means like that specific title that's out of date is going to apply to, it's going to be found in 3 different places within your manual. And some of these are like 1 or 2 years out of date, and some of them are closer to 9 years out of date. So again, what you do have is this report that's going to help you kind of focus on updating specifically, maybe starting with those mandated policies, but also overall, the policy just needs sort of more eyes on it and needs to be updated. And we need to make sure that the policies are not only legally compliant, but that they still work for your district. The other big thing is that, you know, when we let these policies linger, district changes over time, right? Our populations, our communities change. Part of updating your manual really is making it specific to your district and your community. So we really want to take a look and make sure that your manual is still serving your community in the way that you want it to. It's not only about legal mandates, it's about the, you know, your students and your staff and the community that you serve.
Okay, that was sobering, thank you. So, thank you very much for that assessment.
Of course.
I had a few days where I did find your mandated and conditional mandate list, and I went through
Yes.
it, so I kind of had a heads up that this was coming. I didn't so nicely encapsulate it the way that you did. What is your advice though? Do we start with 1,000 and just start working our way down, or is there a prioritization that you suggest based on what you found? I mean, when I look at some of the stuff, you know, like Williams, Title IX, either there are some key words that, you know, like make my ears, you know, pay attention. I mean, do you have a ranking within what we need to update?
So one route that you could go is to do a workshop, and then someone from CSBA would come to your district and we would do an overhaul of the entire manual. Get the whole thing up to date, your staff, it would be included, a couple board members, and then eventually it would go to the board and out for public comment and things like that. But if you're looking at just where to start right now, what can you do internally as a team, as a district? I would take that report and I would start with the mandated policies.
Right, but within the mandated policies, do you have recommendations?
I
I
would
guess
start
that's
with
what
I would start with the ones that are not adopted and get those on your books. Just throughout the manual, there are a total of, I'm looking for the number right now, 62 policies that are either mandated or conditionally mandated. And I would get those adopted. Conditionally mandated means if you do this, then you need this.
For a second, we're gonna have an announcement.
You're going home.
You wanna make- That's old school. Okay, we're good to go. Yeah, sorry, I just didn't want you to compete with the morning announcements.
So I would start with just what's missing. And again, check those because some of them will be conditionally mandated. For instance, there's one about mathematics placement and grade 9 math. So if you were an elementary school district, that wouldn't apply to you, right? So check those conditionally mandated ones. There will be some you can cross off your list. The mandated ones I would just get in there. And then there are a whole lot of updates that just came out in June that deal with Title IX. So things like that, I would sort of get on right away. And those, because of the subscription you have with CSBA, your district does have access to the most updated policy language. And I know that you have teams who have been trained on that system, but if they need further training to access it, we can have someone reach out to you. But I think that's probably the place to start, is with those mandates. Anything that is mandated but is not included, and then things like Title IX. And again, yeah, those complaint procedures, all of those things are going to be big deals because a lot of those are tied to Title IX, the uniform complaint procedures and the sexual harassment stuff.
Could you explain a little bit of what the workshop and overhaul of the handbook would look like?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. To do the workshop, a CSBA consultant, a policy consultant like myself, would come out to your district. We would be on site for 2.5 days. So we would ask you to bring, and we would share more specific information, right? This is a very general overview. We would ask for a team of people that would include the superintendent. It would include one or two people from HR, someone from facilities, people who are experts in all of these different parts of how your district is run. And we usually ask to include 1 or 2 board members, even if you can't make it the entire time. And what we do is we use that time to compare your existing manual. What are your adoption dates versus CSBA's updated dates, which you already have, right? You have that policy manual review, so a lot of this work has been done for you. We go into every policy and we make a decision. Do we want to keep this? So do we want to update our policy with this language? And when you do that, you can also edit language to make it specific to your district. You're not just adopting a template. We are making changes. This is our district practice.
sorry, 1 second.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We're good.
Go ahead.
Okay. And you can also choose to remove policies, meaning like we don't need to adopt this doesn't apply to us, or we already have an existing district policy and we're going to import that instead because we like our language is better and it is specific to us. So you do that with a consultant physically on site and present with your team. Your team does not need to be policy experts. You need to be district experts. We send a policy expert and help you figure out what language can we change? What is mandated? Within this legal language, what is not legal language that we can use to make this work for our district? And we update your entire manual. So once the board adopts it, we'll get you a clean manual. It will go to the board for reading, for public comment. Eventually, once it's adopted, everything will be legally compliant and up to date. And then you will go through after that, and all you'll need to do are import updates as you see fit. Definitely the mandatory ones, but any other time you want to update your manual, you'll be able to do that. But you will have a global reset of the entire manual.
Yeah, thank you. That was my only question.
Of course.
Anybody else have questions?
Not necessarily a question, but you shared the cost of that.
She did.
of this work. The cost of that work, is $23,000 for the 2.5 day plus. The person, the expert who comes out to work with us is available throughout the year, that next full year, to be able to offer any guidance, advice, support. So if that's an investment that we want to make, knowing how big this problem is. I know that the amount that we spent just on the policy review, which was $1,250, would be taken off of that
Mm.
23,000.
Oh, so we get credit on that, minus 1,250.
1,250.
Mm.
Okay, so it's 23,000, it's 2.5 days, and then you get a consultant for a year,
Yeah.
basically.
Yes, and that includes anything that you need. So, I mean, I'm a consultant who does that work. So for that period of a year, if we need to do a Zoom call, if we need, it's just emails, it's phone, but whatever it is, whatever questions we have or whatever needs to be taken care of, that consultant is ready to be at work for you to make sure that you have everything you need. Everybody who has questions has them answered, and that everything is both legally compliant and tailored to your district.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the code reference. So in the policy guide, there are separate 1,000 sections. So for example, facilities is in the 7,000 section. And so when I did a crosswalk from the CSBA sample to our existing district board policy, it seems to kind of roll up. So like, for example, 7,100, in the CSBA sample, there's a 7,110, a 7,111, and a 7,131. So it seems to me that by the thousands, there's a separation kind of by department. And then in the hundreds, there's a collection of policies that are related. So maybe
Yes.
at the core of my question is the ask of, how is the determination made for what is the appropriate code? Because we have a number of policies that aren't included in the CSBA sample, and there's some in the CSBA sample that we don't have, but is there a master list of codes that are used for these policies?
We do have an internal like master list of the codes, but if you're asking like, if you have a unique policy that CSBA does not have and you want to add that to the manual, is that sort of along the lines of what you're asking? Like, how would we fit that in?
The way that it looks like we've done that is by after the 1,000 number, putting like a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. And so I was just wondering a little bit about the naming convention for the code and kind of doing our own internal analysis to kind of understanding, right, our different areas. So yes, to that point.
Yes. So our codes, honestly, they've been around for a long time, and I'm not sure exactly how we grouped them and came up with them in the first place. But you are correct that there are the thousands that are sort of by department, and then within that, the hundreds that sort of go by those groups that go together, exactly as you stated. When we are adding something else, we look at the content of that policy and see where it would fit the best. So this is just, it's mostly a call that we sort of work with the district to make. However, we do have a master list. So if we're adding those specific policies, I would go in and I would create that code and title for you, and then you would add your policy language. Because then I need to record that this is a number that is in use, so another district can't use your number, right? So every single individual policy, even if it is unique to you, gets its own number and its own title.
Thank you. That's very helpful to understand.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak about the Title IX policies. We are aware of those policies, and we are in the process of working with our legal team to update
Great.
the policies. We have about 10 policies that need to be updated due to the regulations reverting back to the 2020 regulations. So we have that already in process. The reason why we're also in process of doing this is because, there's a federal program monitoring FPM audit that's coming up. With the California Department of Education, the district's gonna be reviewed in February of 2026. So we're in the process of trying to update all of these policies in order to be in compliance by that time. We'll most likely start this process and, I'm already starting it, but we'll probably, start sending it to the board or to superintendent, within the next month or so.
Amazing.
And then I also had a question for you. How are the policies from CSBA updated in regards to the requirements from, CDE?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I think it's amazing that you're already in that process and you're doing all that work to update. It is a lot of work. Like, we are lucky enough to have an entire team of people just dedicated to doing that. But we also know that you guys have another job, right? Your jobs don't stop to do this. This is an addition. So it's great that you're doing that. So with our sample policies, everything is sort of in accordance. Like, if you're able to look at our policies, our samples, then you can turn on comments. So in those comments, it explains, like, this paragraph, it comes from this CDE recommendation, and it's very, very specific. It will also flag ed code or flag any other applicable laws. So any sample policy that we've written, which again is a sample, it's a template designed to be edited and changed for your district. It gives background on the laws and CDE recommendations, even if something is included just because it's a guideline. And so when we go in, everything is in alignment. So this is by our team of writers, who are, I mean, they're reading the laws, they're pulling things in, they're making recommendations as they change. But this goes through sort of a couple months long process with the updates. And then once we get all the language where we believe it needs to be, it goes through a big legal review with our council team as well. So everything is, and then it goes back and is checked to make sure, like, language is correct and in alignment, and like literally every comma is in the correct place. So it goes through quite a process, including a legal review with a team of legal counsel. And then, of course, we always encourage districts, if you would like to have your legal counsel take a look and make sure that this is compliant in the way that you want it to be and it works for you.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, any other questions? Is there public comment?
There is no public comment.
Any other comments? So first, I just want to say to CSBA, thank you very much for your sample policies. I read them and the comments, and they're really helpful to me just to understand. I learn a lot by reading them, so thank you for that. And I think that they're really good jumping off points. So I just wanted to pass that along. And the other thing is, if whether we decide to work with CSBA or not, I think we need to update the full board on how far behind we are. Wow, I knew we were far behind, but I didn't realize we were quite this far behind, so. It's a moment, so we definitely do need to, just schedule a little discussion item to say, hey, this is where we are. And do you have a recommendation on? We don't have to talk about it here. Maybe we can do it offline, but-
Just given the broad scope of the work that is ahead of us and knowing the limitations of staff.
Yep.
To be able to fully focus on this is one way that we could really tackle this problem.
Yeah.
I know that there's also, across the state, LEA's districts are doing this work. I don't think that we have actually even a chance to get on their calendar until January, February of this year. Yeah. And so, given that, I mean, there's work that we can start focusing on those mandated those mandated policies and at least start doing that work behind the scenes, or as we kind of laid out a plan September through October, we can continue with that plan, and then after October, start to tackle our mandated policies. By that time, it sounds like Title IX will be updated, so we may be able to make some headway internally. But I still think that it's how many policies? You shared percentages, but I know we talked specifically about numbers, 500 to 600 policies. That need to
Total.
be,
So, yeah, that's what's in the CSBA sample packet. There are a lot of those you probably will choose not to adopt.
we may have about 500, 400 to 500 that would need to be taken care of. I would recommend that we work with CSBA through this process. I think it will be helpful. I know that in other districts, other places, they may hire someone, put them on, payroll, and they are working, that's their only job, is to work on board policies. This would allow a more collaborative process, and 2.5 days to kind of crank out as much as we could with support, I think would be helpful, and then having a consultant available makes it make sense to me.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me as well. I mean, I think that, why don't we take it back to the full board? And then since we can't schedule that workshop until January, February, it makes sense that the full board will make that decision, just because we might not be in the committee at that point, right? So, if it's just us two, I'd be like, let's just do it. But I think it makes more sense for everyone to make the decision together. And I like your ideas. Let's just start with the mandated ones for now, as many as we can, starting with Title IX, and then we'll go from there. I mean, we can't rush it, but the only thing that I would recommend is that whoever is part on the board of doing that work with the workshop and CSBA and staff, that, then they bring them back to governance again, just to make
Right.
sure that we have,
Right.
because I'm assuming that most community members are not going to attend those 2.5 days
Yeah.
of review of policies, right? So, so that we can open up the transparency, right? If anyone wants to make a comment or wants to bring revisions around the 600 policies that might come forward, right, that there's at least a space for people to come and share that, outside of the board meeting.
And I think over time, we can also chunk them so that we're not
Yeah.
bringing 500 policies to governance or to the board, but
Yeah.
to chunk them down into specific areas that we can talk to.
Makes sense, good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in agreement on that. So for October 8th, let's just do a discussion item.
Yeah.
This is where we are.
We can present it. That
Yeah.
sounds good.
And there was one other thing. Oh, just the other thing is that I read the policy updates and just on a general basis on a quarter, there's a lot. So staying on top of it it's a job, but it's also the board's job, so that does need to get prioritized, and then I'm sure we're not the only district with this at all, so.
But then I think also if CSBA can support us.
Yeah.
Through that process of like, this is the procedure you should follow moving forward, because I can imagine in 10 years, we could be back in the same position,
Yeah.
like, right? So just making sure that the process is.
We'll have to stay.
No, once we get it cleaned up,
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Right.
Once we make that investment and the time investment, the work investment and the money investment, at that point, then we're quarterly
Yeah.
updating policy.
That needs to go into our policy though, that 932, whatever that number was though,
Yeah.
because there's things in, like we have to say on a quarterly basis, we're gonna direct the superintendent to, because the board members don't have access to that. It actually took me years to figure out this stuff existed. I just didn't know. And that's really nobody's fault, but I didn't know. And so if you're on the governance committee, quarterly, you get these reports, you're working with the superintendent. There's always a governance committee and it's part of your life. And I can definitely say that was not part of our life. And I really didn't know. So always learning.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Virginia, thank you very much. Appreciate your
Nice to
time.
meet you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Please reach out if you have any follow-up questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to number 2, update on the services offered, prioritizing policies. All right, so we got that. Number 3, ordering of policies. So you guys are going to, do you want to work now on what to prioritize, or do you want to take that back and communicate offline? I mean, we've got Title IX. I think we've got Williams, UCP, anything related to sexual harassment. So I think we do kind of have our mini list there of what the.
I think I think we have enough to talk through probably till the end of November or into December
Okay,
at this point. Do you want to? Okay.
there's plenty to do.
But why don't you guys, my suggestion, why don't you let the superintendent and cabinet look at specifically the
Yes.
62 mandated,
Mhm.
any outside of Title IX, that maybe there are some urgent ones that we just have no idea about that are in that list. Maybe they can also say like, oh, no, this one has to come with Title IX or whatever.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah, because when I looked at it, I separated mandated and conditional, even though they're aligned, because I was just like, okay, maybe it applies, maybe it doesn't. So, then
Would you like me to send you the policies that our office is reviewing in regards to the Title IX?
I think we can, in this. No, do you want that right now?
As long as.
We haven't done an
somebody's
internal
talking-
review, so I'd like to do an internal review
Yeah.
first.
As long as somebody's talking and then we agendize properly, I'm fine with that, because I don't wanna
Agreed.
not, I don't wanna agendize something and you're like, oh no, I have all of this stuff that I was waiting for.
Do you want us to update this governance policy list? How do you want to
Yeah,
proceed with
sure.
that?
And offline, I need some help on how to set that sheet up, because I'm just having some technical challenges myself that I don't know how to solve, so.
I have my own list, so I can,
You have your own list.
I'll work.
We'll work together. Everybody has their own list. Yeah, that's not. All right, so let's all work from the same thing, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, so offline, we can handle that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're good on that. All right, so up to number 4, any public comment on that?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, but like-
No, okay. Moving on to number 4, Mahmood versus Taylor. I believe we have legal counsel.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll put that in there, yeah.
So good morning, everyone. Just to kind of bring us up to speed, 2 months ago, the US Supreme Court granted public school parents the right to opt out of instruction pertaining to subjects that conflict with their sincerely held religious beliefs. And so for today, what we've done is we've got legal counsel who's going to give us a brief update on how to implement this Supreme Court ruling. And we brought some suggested CSBA policies that can be updated, as well as our previously discussed controversial issues policy to review. So I believe Mr. Solar is on now. Yes, great.
Hi, all. Good to see you. Thanks for inviting me to speak about Mahmood versus Taylor. Is there anything specific you'd like me to discuss other than just overall? I could speak about the case, and I can also just speak real briefly about the CSBA policies that are in front of you. And maybe I start with the case, which is basically was a case coming out of Montgomery County in Maryland, where there were specific curriculum materials, instructional materials that were provided for K through 5 students that had LGBTQ plus themes in them. Parents wanted an opportunity to opt out. At first, the district had provided an opportunity for parents to opt out, and then they were receiving so many opt-outs that they withdrew the opt-out option. So it's sort of like bad facts make bad law. What the United States Supreme Court ultimately determined is that if there are curriculum materials being taught to students that, as they say, provide a very real threat of undermining the religious beliefs and practices that the parents wish to instill in their students, then the parents should A, be able to receive notice of their right to opt out, and B, be able to opt out of the curriculum, of the specific curriculum. I'll tell you, there are a lot of questions that are in place following Mahmoud. There is no real test out there as to what curriculum materials will have a threat of undermining parents' religious beliefs and those religious beliefs they want to instill in their children. But what this case did was it was basically the United States Supreme Court saying that the opt-outs, the right of a parent to opt their children out of any curriculum. There were certain curriculum that in California that parents could opt themselves out, they could opt their child out of, but it was very limited. This one expanded it. The scope of that expansion and the right to opt out is really hard to tell. I'll talk about a few factors that the district may want to consider when they're considering providing an opt-out to parents. But my firm's thought, and I think the thought of basically the legal community, is that the scope of the Mahmoud decision in regard to how expansive parents' rights to opt their children out of curriculum is going to be decided in future cases, unfortunately. So you will see probably a lot of litigation across the country arising out of the Mahmoud decision, because there are going to be parents who believe that they have an absolute right to opt their children out of certain curriculum discussions, and there are going to be certain districts that are going to say no. For example, Mahmoud dealt specifically with, like I said, LGBTQ+ curriculum, specifically for elementary school students. Now, the court said, this is an example of where parents have an opportunity to opt out, but they didn't give the full scope and direction of how expansive the opt-out is. So the question arises, can a student in AP Biology, for example, a high school student in AP Biology, opt out of evolution if it goes against the teaching of evolution, goes against their parents' beliefs? I don't think that at this point Mahmoud stands for that. However, I suspect that you will see cases come up around the country where you will see parents desiring to see an expansive use of Mahmoud to opt their high school students out of evolution. So I'll summarize just by saying some of the factors that we think that you should be looking at. Every district is probably going to be landing a little different than other districts. Even throughout the state of California, you're going to see districts interpreting Mahmoud and how they want to interpret Mahmoud different. I think that some of the things that the court said is the factors you'll be looking at is what's the age of the student. Now, they didn't expressly limit the decision to allowing only elementary grade students to opt out. They said that age could be a factor, but getting back to my example before of the high school student opting out of AP Biology teaching on evolution, they didn't say high school students are not allowed to opt out. So this opt-out right goes to all families, regardless of the age of the student. However, you can include age as a factor. They also said that there's a difference between normative and existence curriculum. So an example of that is, and this was a big basis in the decision written by Justice Alito, who said what happened here was you were normalizing, for example, gay marriage issues and issues regarding transgender students. Now, candidly, I thought that gay marriage was made part of our culture, when the federal government and the United States Supreme Court said, or the court said a long time ago, 10 years or more, that gay marriage was legal. What Justice Alito's concern was, and the majority went with this concern, is that this wasn't just simply existence, that there are for example, gay people who get married, or there is an existence of students who are transgender. What the court was concerned about was making it normative. The word I would use was glorifying. What the court would say is glorifying gay marriage or glorifying students, the existence of transgender students. And so they don't, for example, what I talked about before with a student opting out of evolution. I don't think that there's a strong argument that a student should not be able to opt out of evolution, because evolution is simply a scientific theory that is being taught to AP biology students. It is not glorifying it. It is not saying it is the only theory of creation out there, but that it is a theory. So that would be the difference between, I think it would be problematic if a biology teacher said evolution is the only theory in regard to how human beings developed. But it is not, so there's a difference between normative, or basically glorifying something in the eyes of the court, as opposed to simply saying this exists. One of the examples that I use in making that distinction, where there's a gray area, is if a middle school student or a high school student is reading The Life and Times of Harvey Milk. And so I think a parent who would want to opt out their child would say, this book is glorifying Harvey Milk as a gay man. I think that the districts that did not want to allow an opt-out of the Life and Times of a student reading The Life and Times of Harvey Milk would be saying, this is a biography about a politician who had a significant impact in San Francisco in the 1970s. The fact that he was gay was only one factor and part of his life. We are showing that gay men exist and that they are politicians. We are not glorifying his homosexuality. We are simply stating it as fact. So if we are not, as the court said, glorifying it, then we would say, no, there is no right to an opt-out. The last factor would be, or the last factor we may want to look at is that it has to be part of the curriculum materials. So what the court specifically said, we're not talking about books on a shelf. We're not talking about pulling books off of a shelf in the library, or volunteer reading books or reading options that a teacher may put on the shelf. The distinction that the court in Taylor and Mahmoud made was that these were books that were being integrated into the curriculum in the classroom. So that's Mahmoud. And those are the factors. What we're recommending for a process, I heard somebody discussing a process. What we're recommending is that parents be provided notice of their right to opt out, and parents be provided with a process for opting out. We're suggesting that parents, if they want to opt out, that they have to fill out a form that would go to the site principal, and perhaps there's somebody at the district level who is coordinating with the principals who are receiving these opt-out requests, so that there is consistency throughout the district. So that's sort of the process that we're developed. We've created forms internally for our clients. If the district would like them, we can distribute those, just in regard to notice to parents, in regard to the opt-out form, in regard to decisions for staff or the principal to send to parents once a decision has been made. In regard to the CSBA policies that you have in front of you, the CSBA policies in regard to Mahmoud really haven't changed that much. Basically, what these policies did was they basically provide, it's more in the commentary that CSBA provides to its clients, and it basically acknowledges, hey, Mahmoud is a decision that was recently made by the US Supreme Court. This kind of opens up the or expands a parent's right to opt out, because prior in California, parents could opt out of health curriculum for religious-based purposes, and parents could opt out of California's healthy, of the curriculum for California's Healthy Youth Act and HIV education. And Mahmoud expands all of that. That is really what the policies you have in front of you talk about in regard to Mahmoud. Just commentary, noting that Mahmoud is there. In regard to the controversial issues policy that you have, I heard earlier discussions about updating policies. The controversial issues policy, model policy you have in front of you, policy 6144, that has not been touched by CSBA or revised by CSBA because of Mahmoud. They don't even mention Mahmoud in here. It seems what the district is doing is updating the district's policies, controversial issues policy, to bring them up to the last time they were revised in 2017.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Sklar. And before we kind of talk about next steps and what we're bringing forward, I just want to pause to see if there's any questions specific to what was just shared.
Thank
I know
you.
it's a lot, so I apologize for that, but
Thank you. No, thank
that's
you,
what you
Mr.
get when inviting an
I
attorney
appreciate
to talk about Mahmoud. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the summary. So one of the, and so you said we're about to talk about these things, but Mr. Starr made a couple of recommendations
Yes.
of next steps. And the first one, notice to parents to opt out a specific form.
Yeah.
Now the question would be like, what would they be opting out of, right? Because couldn't we argue that our curriculum does not fit the criteria of the Supreme Court case as described, Mr. Escobar?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Like I said, I think that districts are going to be interpreting this differently. There may be some districts out there that are going to say the US Supreme Court spoke specifically to curriculum for K through 5 students, specifically in regard to LGBTQ plus issues that were being integrated into the curriculum. I think there's no doubt that the US Supreme Court in that holding says that parents have the right to opt out for religious purposes, their elementary school students from LGBTQ plus curriculum, But beyond that, that's where sort of the rubber hits the road, and districts are going to have different takes in regard to, do we allow our middle school students to opt out of, of reading the life and times of Harvey Milk? You are going to have some districts in California that are going to allow that, that I think are going to be granting those opt-outs, and there are going to be some districts that won't. I will say that if the districts that do have an expansive view of what parents can opt out of, I think they're going to run into issues of and allegations of discrimination. I mean, the ACLU has already put out there that, they're going to be watching districts in regard to, the take would be Mahmoud is very limited. So if you start allowing not just elementary school students, but middle school students and high school students to opt out of LGBTQ plus conversations and curriculum, that is going to lead to an allegation of discrimination against those students and othering other students. And so districts are going to be in the middle on this and have to gauge themselves very carefully. So in regard to, how expansive the district wants to be in regard, or should be in regard to allowing opt-out, I think that, the opt-out, like I said, for elementary school students on LGBTQ is pretty clear. However, beyond that, that's each district is going to have to decide whether to allow parents to opt out on a case-by-case basis and specific to the facts.
We just had the opportunity to collaborate around this with Contra Costa school districts and through the county Office of Ed. And I actually brought a sample letter today from Mount Diablo to specifically look at, but to Mr. Scolar's point, we deeply value and respect both our staff and students that are LGBTQ plus, and specifically, we wouldn't be looking at trying to adopt an opt-out form that targets a specific topic,
Right.
because everyone has a personal held belief, and so we would do as Mr. Scolar recommended, which is we would remind parents annually of their opportunity to opt out, their right to opt out. And we wouldn't cite any specific curriculum
Right.
because every single family has a sincerely held belief that might be different for them. And so what I brought for us today is using both Mr. Scolar's recommendations, the county's recommendations, and stealing from neighboring districts who, use their legal counsel to design language that's in accordance to the latest litigation. And I did take the opportunity to bring forward our board policies, EP 6141.2, recognition of religious belief and customs. It is, like Mr. Scolar said, really out of date. It's 2007 was
Yeah.
the last time that ours was updated. What I did is, if you look at the order of the policies or the documents that are attached, we have our board policy, which all of these are 2007. I have the CSBA suggested changes with the comments, because it's really helpful to understand the why behind that was edited. And then I have just the clean version so we can see. I am recommending that we do update to the latest CSBA policy for recognition of religious beliefs, sexual health, HIV/AIDS prevention, comprehensive health education. Those three are recommended by the CSBA to be updated in accordance to Mahmoud versus Taylor. We did talk about controversial issues the last time that we had this discussion. It is not a recommended update for this, but it needs to be
No, it
updated.
is. Not in their.
And not in their
August-
suggested, yeah.
Not in their August release, but if you go back to, I can't remember if it's June or if it's March, but recently.
Yeah.
They did, bring that up. with
Perfect.
Mahmoud and Taylor,
Yeah.
and I could go back and look for
Yeah.
it, because I wouldn't have registered it unless I read
Yeah.
it somewhere. So
Yeah.
it came from somewhere and it wasn't something I would.
Perfect. Well, and then I felt like it's 2007,
Yeah,
it needs
we
to be
should do it anyway.
updated. So we went ahead and looked at, and have tracked changes of the edits that would bring us up to date for that policy as well. Since we had previously discussed it, and so I would bring forward, we can go individually through the policies, and I think I heard Mr. Scolar maybe.
Yes. Oh, I didn't say it. I'm sorry, I didn't say anything. That was just me coughing.
That's all right. So we can go through individually and discuss the changes. The changes are significant for some of the policies, particularly controversial issues, because there was quite a bit of guidance that was provided both by Ed Code, new law and litigation for those policies. And then I also would like to take some time to discuss the procedure that can be followed, which would follow that recommendation from Mr. Scolar of noticing families, and would like to, potentially get direction from the board around our process, which would follow a notification that goes annually to families, a form that is shared through our website, but then filled out at the school level. That would be handed to the principal, that would then come to me, and I would give it to our superintendent and for our board. I'm gonna pass these around. This is the Mount Diablo example, of the parental notice. They did choose to do TK through 5th grade, as Mr. Scolar mentioned, but other districts have just made it generic so that it could include other students in the middle and the high school. And I'll wait till it gets passed around, and Rosa does have it if we want to project.
Before we move to the notice.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I don't necessarily have questions on the controversial issues policy. I have a question about actually the 6144. No, I'm sorry, that's controversial. 6141.2, the recognition of religious beliefs and
Yeah.
customs, which I feel like had major changes.
Yeah.
So how do we wanna go about that?
So before we go into the policies, can I just ask Mr. Sklar, a question. Coming back to what is a curriculum material? So as I wanna, as much as possible, being that we're on shifting ground, my understanding that a curriculum material is an adopted curriculum material that's passed by the board and sent out, and in the case of the Maryland School District, it was an English curriculum, and this particular curriculum showed pictures of a dog lost at a pride parade, which is, you know, it was incorporated into the curriculum. To me, my interpretation is that that's different than classroom reading library, where students can pick and choose amongst many books for personal reading. Is that, do I have an understanding of that's somewhat accurate?
That's correct. So in Mahmoud, you had a teacher who was reading those books that was approved by the board to the class, and they were discussing the book, and it was part of the lesson plan. So that was clearly curriculum materials. Now, what I just anecdotally hear about are, and so, yeah, I mean, you're going to have clearly curriculum that's approved by the board, either as core curriculum and or supplemental curriculum. I don't know if it's the practice, for example, of a teacher to see a great book in a bookstore, bring that book in, buy that book, bring it in the classroom and read it and discuss it to the class. If that's going on, if that's happening, then I think that Mahmoud would address that. Now, Mahmoud is not a very practical decision. Like I said, like this is going, there's a lot of questions out there. So how do you provide notice for that if that, in that instance that happens? If you have a second grade teacher that is reading, that brings a book in that they've read in prior years, but isn't necessarily listed as part of the supplemental curriculum in the classroom. Is that something that could happen?
And
If it does happen,
ultimately,
I would say that it probably is affected by Mahmoud if,
Yeah.
and if they're reading it to the class. And how you provide notice to the parents of that on a book that comes into the classroom that isn't listed as supplemental curriculum and isn't listed as core curriculum. I don't know how to speak to that. I don't know, from a practical sense, how you provide notice to parents to opt out on that.
And ultimately, the discussion that we had at the county level around this was, again, back to adopted curriculum and teacher-led lessons and giving the parents the right to opt out, right? And so the responsibility is of the parent to notify if it is something they want to opt out to. It doesn't say that we need to share everything it is that we're teaching. Our teachers do have the right to design lessons based on the curriculum that is adopted by the district. So in this instance, what the discussion we had that counties or that districts around us are adopting is a process in which should the parent have questions, they reach out to teachers and then they're given the opportunity to opt out. We get into trouble when we deny opt-outs. And so if a parent reaches out and asks for an opt-out based on a sincerely held religious belief, I would suspect that then, after discussion with our superintendent and approval of that request in writing, then we would have to create a process in which that student is to opt out. And then that would protect both the right to opt out, but the burden of responsibility to have that option is on the parent to ask for the opt-out, not of the district to say, these are all the things, right?
Right. If I could just add to that, I agree with that. I don't think that the district has to come to the parent and provide that list. However, I do want to say, even before Mahmoud, California law does allow a parent to review all of the instructional material that will be in the classroom and the curriculum. And so that's already existing. So parents have that right to view that material. I don't think that it's the burden the burden isn't on the district to come to the parent and proactively share that information, but the parent does have the right to come to the district to get that information.
And that's in place for our comprehensive health education that happens in, fifth grade, eighth grade, and, or in middle school and then secondary school. And so we do have a procedure in which, you know, we're accustomed to doing that, and this would be separate from that procedure.
I've got my risk hat on.
Yeah.
And a couple of things occurred to me. One, our current adopted curriculum does not have a basal. It's a framework in which teachers get to select
Right.
the literature that they use to teach the skills.
Mhm.
So when I think of it, especially for elementary teachers, and I look at this opt-out form, it feels like we are transferring responsibility to the teachers. And I'm not sure that we have policies and or regulations that would protect the district in this moment. For example, if a parent fills out this form and says, I want my student to opt out of any literature that includes, I don't know, LGBTQ, then it's up to the teacher to make sure that they have a system to have that student not be in class when they read that book or present that material. From a risk standpoint, we have 54 schools and thousands, you know, at least 1,500 teachers. I'm not sure that this will, I'm sure there'll be test cases. So I believe that later down the line, this will become clear. But in this moment, and the way in which our district, the litigation against our district is rising, I'm extremely worried about us having a process firm enough, or I should say that is in the spirit of this current language and doesn't put our teachers out there to, you know, in essence, this is censoring and to some degree. So I know that this is difficult for everybody, but I can see, and I'll ask Ed to speak to it because it's new for everybody. But I don't know how, well, I think in this moment, we're missing critical information that I think will come later. So how do we address that in this moment? And those are all questions, just things that come to mind as I assess risk.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point around our currently adopted curriculum for elementary reading, readers and writers workshop, there's many lessons that teachers use. There are recommended texts that are for read aloud, so those lists can be published. However, teachers oftentimes will model with different books, as they have the right to do as the, you know, teacher in the room. And then the rest of the lesson cycle requires a workshop model in which students select their own books, right? Many of which, you know, we've really tried to be inclusive in our libraries and may have books that are representative of the students that we serve. And so I think to your point, could we publish the list of the recommended books and then create a process in which teachers, you know, let us know when they're choosing to use a different text? Absolutely. But in all of the other districts that have used a similar opt-out form, it has to be specific to the content that they want to opt out in. We don't do a blanket online form because oftentimes what has happened is certain organizations have reached out to districts and provided blanket letters. And so we're really looking at specific content so that we can study the curriculum and then learn about what it is that we're noticing the community flagging. And so if you look at the Mount Diablo example, you can see that, you know, they provide they do have online a comprehensive list of the adopted materials that's in compliance to their goals with the LCAP. They have an opt-out form, and the procedure that is followed is that they have it available online, but you can see in the second page that it has a please request the form for your school. And so this is in an effort to have the parent go to the school to actually get the form and fill it out. so that we prevent these blanket, requests. And then in compliance with, them being able to tell us specifically what it is that they want to opt out, they provide a simple, rationale for what it is that they're specifically asking to be opted out of, what their statement of religious belief, deeply held religious belief that they're naming as why they need to, and then just reason for the opt-out request. They acknowledge it, the district then receives it, it's turned into the principal and, forwarded to me and the superintendent so that we can study it and grant or not grant approval. And in most cases, again, the recommendation would be that if a parent wants to be opted out, that then our responsibility would be to give them the opt-out and to, really think about providing an alternative activity and or space, which we already do for comprehensive sex ed and for sometimes school events that parents don't want their students to participate in. As for example, we near a Halloween, right? And October, this happens often in schools. And so our schools are accustomed to doing this already. But just, this concept of it with instruction is a bit different.
I do. Sorry, I don't want to lose the point that Dr. Moses mentioned. And Dr. Moses' example, Mr. Escolar, about a parent just requesting a very general statement of, any LGBTQ plus, materials used. Wouldn't that just be denied because it's not specific enough to say the math curriculum, which mentions LGBTQ plus issues in chapter 1? Like, I just don't want it to, I'm worried about what we are going to create in policy versus what will be approved, which it gives a lot of leeway, right, to, I guess, the superintendent ultimately, right, but like department, right? So I don't want there to be a lot of leeway outside of what we write in policy, right? So, Mr. Scholar, am I wrong on that? Just
No,
because-
I would agree. It sounds like, I hear your concern. If a parent just says, I don't want my second grader or my sixth grader discussing or hearing anything about LGBTQ plus, I think it would be appropriate to say, here's the curriculum materials that your instructional materials that your child's classroom or your teacher may be integrating into the instruction. We need to know you can have access to this material and you can review it. And then you can tell us specifically what material you want your child to opt out of. Because getting back to my other point, how do we know, if we just say LGBTQ plus anything that mentions LGBTQ plus, we don't know if that is normative. We don't know if it is just existence and exposure. So I think it would be appropriate to say, we need to know the specific instructional material that you want your child to be able to opt out of.
And I think that also, I want to be very careful about not asking teachers what supplemental materials they're going to use. Listen, as an old teacher now, I never knew what I was going to use 6 months from now, right? So how would we do that too, right? And I don't want to put that added work on teachers too. And I'm assuming our teachers union will also have something to say about that, right? But nonetheless, I don't want to add work where to, I can't remember if Dr. Moses mentioned that, like to the sides on something that, like, I think as a district, I may be wrong, we ultimately disagree with, right? So we just want to be in compliance to some extent, but not take it further than what we absolutely have to, comply with, right? Yeah.
Could I add to that? Because I think you're correct. And if our classroom teachers were required to teach our curriculum, then I wouldn't worry about risk. But our teachers have the autonomy to actually replace the curriculum materials as long as they're teaching the standards. And that is the gray area. We adopt a curriculum, but I think if we were to poll current teachers and principals, we would find that they are using a lot of curricular materials that we haven't approved. So then there's the question of, in the spirit of this legislation, is it just board adopted curriculum, or is it teacher planned curriculum, which is where I'm going. And our policies allow latitude, flexibility, and autonomy. And so are we protected in that case?
I have a question about, things that are in place for the state of California
Mhm.
around, 1078, book banning, around
Mm-hmm.
our FAIR Act and other legislation, other state legislation. This for me is raising, hi Ed, I'm new.
Nice to meet you.
See you again. It's been many, many years since
Yeah.
we've worked together. But it raises questions around, and again, with bringing up autonomy, and teachers being able to opt out of our adopted curriculum, ensuring that as they are selecting materials and curriculum, that they are aware of both our federal legislation, this Supreme Court decision, as well as things that are in place for our state around what materials should be available in classrooms. It raises questions about classroom libraries and school libraries and how this is impacted, or how this, the implementation of this decision impacts our schools as well. So it's the autonomous piece. So it's our autonomous piece, but it's also making sure that we are in line across the board, regardless of this, this decision, that we are in line across the board with our state requirements as well.
If I could just add to that, just to let you know, Mahmoud, like to your concern about banning books and books in the library, Mahmoud does not speak to that. No, the Supreme Court did not say, like they said, this decision does not impact books just sitting on a shelf in the library, right? So if you want to bring a book into the library, Mahmoud should not impact that, your ability to do that. Mahmoud does not say that. Sorry. Mahmoud does not say.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Mahmoud does not say that there are materials that you are not allowed to teach in the class. Mahmoud just says, if there are items or things that you're teaching in the class that and instructional materials that the parents believe interferes with their religious beliefs, then you will have to allow them to opt out, but it doesn't prevent anything from coming in the classroom. In regard to your concern about the FAIR Act, I agree. I think that this is the Mahmoud decision is going to create incredible tension between what the decision and what the FAIR Act says, which is basically California law that you must integrate into your curriculum contributions of LGBTQ plus California folks. And so this is going to create a tension there. You definitely want to comply with the FAIR Act, and you want to be able to discuss, once again, going back to the example of the life and times of Harvey Milk, the contributions that Harvey Milk made to California and San Francisco. And I think that why you would not allow the opt-out of the life and times of Harvey Milk is because we are complying with the FAIR Act to show his contributions, and we are basically saying that being a gay man was one factor in this guy's in Harvey Milk's fantastic life. And so I no doubt you are going to see tension between the opt-outs and what the FAIR Act says. The other thing is just very quickly, in regard to the tension between what the Mahmoud decision is now putting on the plate of teachers, that's going to cause a lot of tension as well. There is going to, like Mahmoud discusses, and what most policies are going to say is that if a student opts out of curriculum material, that the student is not to be penalized at all, and that there should be an alternative assignment created for that student. And so that is going to cause a lot of tension because it's going to create it will create extra work for teachers.
Thank you.
Well, and at this level, we want the burden to be on the district, right? Our burden is to create a procedure of noticing and an option for opting out. And so because of that, our recommendation would be that we bring these policies in alignment with Mahmoud and Taylor up to date, that we take advantage and also bring controversial issues up to date, since none of these have been updated since 2007, and that utilizing both the main. Let's get here.
Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Latina Community Posting Theory. Today is Cultural Tire Day. Did you know that Hispanic Heritage Month originally started as a week? It then got extended to a month in 1968 by President Ronald Reagan and made into law that same year. Are you interested in engineering or any other career in STEM? Come join us in 5105 today at lunch for an informational session for Mesa, GM's biggest STEM club. It is a great way to get started in the STEM field and look great on resume. Follow our Instagram at CAHS_Mesa for more information. Speakers, beginning Wednesday, September 17th, College and Career Advisors will be hosting college application workshops every Monday and Wednesday during 6 to 8 until 4 p.m. in the library. Workshops will run through November 12th. Remember, UC and CSU applications are due December 1st. If you have a 6th grade class, please attend after class. For additional college and career information, check your senior calendar on Google Classroom. Juniors, now is the time to consider taking your SAT or ACT. SAT
It's fun to hear.
Make sure they get some kudos for that.
That's a great interview done. So kind of to recap what I was saying is we are recommending that, should this group decide to move forward in making the adjustments to the 4 policies, the 3 that are recommended by CSBA to bring us up to date to 2025, as well as Mahmoud versus Taylor, And that we take the opportunity to update controversial issues, since it hasn't been updated since since 2007. We are taking the direct recommendations of the CSBA suggested language, as that will also support us when there are updates to make edits, so that we're not making too many local edits, so that we can update much more quicker. I'm also, should this group decide, I can work with our superintendent to create a draft for our district of this letter that could be posted, and so notice could happen by being added to the parent-student handbook that is posted publicly, as well as to have under teaching and learning a option where families can click a link and find this, and wrong one, article, this, and have the form like this. And then should this board decide that this is a procedure we want to follow, that we would work with providing our sites with guidance on how it is, should a family come and ask for an opt-out. Right now, based on my conversation with Contra Costa County people, most have not gotten any opt-out requests yet, and/or one. And so while we expected that there would be a lot of requests, not yet has that occurred.
Did you get all your questions answered for
Risk,
this?
in the moment, yeah, yeah. Just trying to flesh it out and
Yeah.
constantly asking questions of our partners as well, so we'll continue to work at it.
I think I would add, a conversation with our unions so
Yes.
that they're aware that this is coming out.
Attention staff, Ruthie, please go to your office, you have a parent waiting. Ruthie, please go to the cashier's office, you have a parent waiting. Thank you.
Didn't we pass a policy about limiting?
I was already thinking about it. You were saying?
I think that we should have, at least to inform our unions. So Sylvia, that may be something to add to the weekly conversations that you're having with them.
Solutions, yeah.
Yep,
Mhm.
and then, across the board, and then also, that interruption just threw me off.
I know, it was.
It
It was
Yeah.
bad, and it was
We have a couple
moving.
We have a
questions,
couple
so.
questions.
Okay, keep going, I'll try to come back.
You wanna use-
Okay, so if we have all the groundwork
Yeah.
done, going directly to the policies.
Mhm.
So on 6141.2, recognition of religious beliefs and customs, I think this is more for Mr. Sklar.
Mhm.
A couple of years back or a year back, California State Legislature approved an opt-out procedure. I think it was really around Muslim students and but I haven't seen that reflected anywhere in CSBA or anywhere else. I mean, we should reflect that somewhere in a policy or a administrative regulation. Are you aware of that? And where would you recommend that goes?
What is the specific opt-out you're speaking
It
to?
is an opt-out of PE, I believe, if you are fasting, and I think it
Okay.
was specific to Ramadan, the Ramadan period.
Okay,
But I haven't seen it reflected, and I know I didn't make it up because I read it in the legislation.
I remember it, so I know you didn't make
Yeah.
it up.
yeah,
I
I mean,
didn't. No, yeah,
You
I didn't think
didn't
so.
make it up. Unless we both just,
so if you
Um,
want, I can explore why it's not in there, but why it's not specifically in CSBA's model policy. I think overall that the opt-out, that opt-out for, if a student is fasting for Ramadan and needs to opt out of PE for religious purposes, like fasting for Ramadan, that would be covered here. It doesn't specifically mention it. I mean, someone can check back with CSBA as to why not, but I think that it is covered here.
Oh, so you do think it's covered?
Yeah.
Okay, so then it would fall to like an AR to the superintendent to create that notice. Okay, so that's fine. My other question was on 6144 controversial issues.
Mhm.
Trustee Smith Folds asked for a definition of controversial issues, and I think that was really smart, because in a lot of these things, you've heard me say about harassment, or you've heard me say about bullying, or you've heard me say about discrimination. I'm not entirely sure what that is. And so in the policy that I wrote up, I did create what a controversial issue is, which was, we can't fully define what it is, but these are some of the elements that may be included in it. In what you presented, I don't see that included, so I just wanted to know if you didn't get it, or why, or if there's a legal reason why that wasn't included.
Are you talking about my discussions on the factors for Mahmoud? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I want you to know my high school got rid of all bells. Yes, it can be done. So I think it's to whoever that went to, whoever the email went to. So, no, okay, I can send you.
Okay.
Um,
So, a definition about what is a controversial issue.
yeah, and I actually wrote something up.
If you could send it, that would be.
yeah,
great.
okay. Okay. And that's all my questions on them. Otherwise, my comment on the CSBA policies was that really the only thing I saw was an update, and that it includes a little paragraph about you have the right to opt out. So I didn't
Yeah.
see anything really,
Substantial.
it seemed really bland, I guess is the
Yeah, it is.
word I'd like to use.
Mhm.
I do remember what I was gonna say. I do
Great.
think we also may want to put together kind of a training video.
Mhm.
So that teachers are aware of
Mhm.
this new policy and the expectations at the site.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
just putting that out there so that it's not. I don't want to try to pull people together for one large Zoom. I think that would be a lot. But if we're able to put out a training video, Rachel, put out a training video on what we're expecting teachers to do around the Mahmoud decision.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And my question's related to that. In 6141.2,
Mhm.
page 3,
Which version?
I'm sorry,
The,
it's the one with all the red.
okay.
Students whose parents and guardians opt them out of such instruction may be offered an alternative theory or similar educational value, which we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
You know, that obviously hasn't happened much, especially not in this decision from what you just shared, but, question about whose responsibility is it to create, you know, that additional work or whatever. Obviously, right now, the most likely fall on the teachers.
Okay.
But I wonder if there's a path for us to create something centrally
Mhm.
to support teachers, so it's not added on teachers
Mhm.
as they come. So my question is, do you think that there's bandwidth within educational services that if we get you know, notice that ed services could work with the site to create that material instead of the teachers having to do it? Sorry, I should have waited. Instead of teachers having to do it.
Yeah, I think we'd have to probably consider that as a conversation that we include with our unions. And it would be dependent on the length of time that the
Right.
opt-out is requested, and so we can certainly include that in our process to consider. What we don't want is a burden on the teachers, right?
Right.
And we also do have a lean ed services, and so could we create some generic packets? Absolutely, that could be arranged, but I think we'd have to see how often this is occurring and what grade levels and for what length, so that we can make sure that it's, you know, an appropriate. I mean, if it's someone trying to opt out an entire week, that might be a bit tough, right?
Or a whole
But if it's,
curriculum.
or it's a whole curriculum or a full hour, it just depends. So I'd like to potentially discuss this with Superintendent Cotton. and
I
see
feel
what
like
we
it would also align somewhat with our independent study.
want.
Right.
And so we can look at that language and
Interesting.
look at something. I would be, if it's a lesson, I think giving students something that's aligned to what they're working on in the classroom.
Yeah.
So these would be generic lessons that they would be receiving that would not align to anything specific. I wouldn't want students to miss out on instructional time and
Mhm.
instructional opportunity. That then raises that raise your
Yeah.
risk hat again.
Yes.
Yep.
So it is definitely a balance.
Yep.
So.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if I was one of the unions specifically,
Mhm.
I don't know, we have guys here, I would, as soon as we pass this policy, I would do the demand to bargain, right? So I think that we gotta also get ahead of that
Yeah.
and meet with UTR specifically, and if we're gonna include this language, talk to them about like the process, right?
Yeah.
Before we put it forward to principals and teachers specifically, right, around, like, this is what it would look like, right? Collaborating with them.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that would be the plan.
Okay, and also, like President Reckler, I think everything else looks fine with me. I appreciate that that it's big enough, right? And big enough, that, you know, we could hopefully only accept the minimum.
Mhm.
I also agree with only keeping it, you know, K-5 for now until law changes, right? As, you know, Mr. Escobar shared. Again, just the minimum that we need to do,
Mhm.
in my opinion. But
Yeah.
thank you.
And what I will say is that you're right, it's vague, it's making all the edits that are necessary as required by ed code and law. And in all of them, the language says, when required by law, here's what it is. So it just really allows that flexibility that is necessary. As Mr. Scalar said, there are likely going to be litigations that happen and changes that occur, so that keeps us up to date.
But I don't wanna be the poster child.
I don't want to be the poster child either, and so with that in mind, again, our responsibility is to provide a process to opt out, and so am I hearing direction that we're okay to move this forward to a first reading so that we can begin to roll out this process, or?
I'd like you to look at controversial issues and the definition,
Yep,
both
absolutely.
to include, because I thought that was a good idea, and also, are we also, are we compliant and not setting off something, you know, that we don't need to?
Yep.
But I don't have any.
Something to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll work with our superintendent. to
Yes,
figure out what
and
we
public
want.
comment, is there public comment?
No.
All right,
Thank you.
anything else on
Thank you.
this? Anything else for legal counsel? Any last words from legal counsel while we have you, Mr. Sklar?
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good.
Thanks to the committee for inviting me. Thanks Superintendent Cotton for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. 5, special ed policies.
Good morning, everyone. There are, as you see, 6 policies here, most of which touch various areas beyond special education as well. So I'm open to any and all feedback and contribution to the conversation. If we start with the non-discrimination district programs and activities, you see there are several changes to the language. Some are just changing of verbiage with pretty similar meaning. Some are more substantive changes. There's a lot, so I don't think it makes sense to read through the whole thing unless that's the request, but open to questions.
So I don't necessarily have questions on this one or the next one. Thank you for doing the work, by the way. There were no policies attached for C, D, E, and F, though, on the agenda. Is that purposeful? Did I miss it?
We have we have them all in the same file. I had the same question about the attachments.
Are they all under B? Is that what it is? No.
No.
Which one are we missing?
C, D, E, and F. We had them a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, there
So
were-
I
last
do
time-
remember reading them,
Yeah.
but. Okay.
We had 12 last time because the ARs were included, so we just brought the board policies. And the graduation policy is not here. We had a meeting this week with special ed and ed services staff to go through, made several edits, putting finishing touches, so it'll be ready for the next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and F. C, D, E, F. So I don't necessarily have questions. I do remember reading them then. I didn't have questions then.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's changed now, but,
I mean, what I would recommend is, where are we at, 11 o'clock? I would recommend, that we work on A and B. I have some comments on C, but I just want to make sure I registered.
thank you.
And then we can bring those back, or if you wanna upload them now.
I can
Just
upload them now.
Okay, so on non-discrimination,
Attention teachers and students, please interruption. At this time, all health academy students and teachers, please go to the theater. Again, at this time, all health academy teachers and students, please go to the theater. Teachers, please escort and sit with your students. Please leave your backpacks in class. Thank you.
so would you like to summarize 0410 non-discrimination in district programs and activities? Is there anything glaring in this that you need to know, or?
I don't think there's anything glaring that we need to know. It is a policy on ensuring that all students in our district and all pupils in our district have equal opportunity and access to all activities.
Cause to me, it looks like a subtle update rewrite. It doesn't look like a major,
Exactly.
okay. Any questions on it?
For this policy, was this provided to legal to review, or how was it updated?
These were all reviewed by legal.
Okay, yeah, because this was on my list as well for updates to Title IX. We just haven't got into it as well.
Mhm.
And it looks like you can cross it off now.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
It's good, people are talking.
I mean, I would recommend it, moving forward on it, I would keep it in your group as you are working towards Title IX. If there's any red flags there, it can be revised again.
Yeah, so my plan was to, if it gets approved, or after this meeting, send it to our legal, have them review it. If everything's okay, advise Mr. Fleischman, everything's good to go, you can move forward.
Yeah, but it would, please do that. If there's an issue, we would then bring it back to, when we do our, I'd like to, when we do our Title IX review,
Mhm.
if there were any concerns, to have those concerns brought back to governance
Mhm.
with a Title IX kind of perspective.
Mr. Fleischman, did your legal team look at whether it was compliant? Okay.
Mhm.
Then Superintendent Cotton, sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I just don't want us to pay twice the amount for
Mhm.
legal fees. I don't see a point for the Title IX office to send it to legal to review again if the sped department sent it to the review specifically for those things as well.
So then we would hold on that item. I would then recommend that we hold on that item, and it's,
Just because I know our legal fees are like
No, I
growing and
understand
growing,
that.
right? Yeah.
but I would want them to look at it in terms of Title IX.
Yeah.
A Title IX review. So it's gonna get reviewed twice. The question is, does it get reviewed twice and brought back to governance? I mean, either way, if it's reviewed and there are some things that still need to be adjusted for Title IX, that will be coming back to the governance committee when Jose and his team bring back Title IX items. I don't know if it was asked to be reviewed for Title IX compliance at the time that it was reviewed for special education compliance. And those are kind of different bodies that will be doing that review,
Okay.
I think.
Well, I just asked Mr. Fleischman.
What's that?
Never mind. Okay, well. you
That's a
guys-
good idea.
Yeah.
For these items, do you know if these items were reviewed for both Title IX compliance and special education?
I would have to ask a follow-up question. I'd have to check with my team. on that.
I'll let you go, Sam.
If there's anything that needs to be revised, it'll come back to governance committee, but I would recommend that we move forward as knowing that these items are in compliance for special education at this time.
That's what's good. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to first reading, if nothing more. Okay, so then we can move to, I don't see anything in this that seems very normal, so we can move, if there's nothing further, we can agendize it for first reading.
And then the other policies were uploaded. So I don't know if you need to look at them for a minute.
Okay, so LCAP, so this one I definitely have some comments on. So the first comment is to create a administrative regulation to handle some of the more granular details of the LCAP. Most of this was, CSBA moving lots of things around. It basically stayed the same, but they definitely moved a lot. A lot of things to different. Something, whatever they did. But there are things in here that I would like to see, if they're not gonna be addressed in a policy, I do wanna see them addressed in an administrative regulation. Which is to work with parents, to make a calendar, to make sure that committee functions well. We've come a long way, but I feel like those parents, were first of all appreciated, and second of all, would wanna see these codified. Getting expenditures. Being able to address the board so that they know that they can address the board. Advertising to recruit. So what else? Oh, LCAP funds being spent on food. Keeping it to programs unless it's specific for them, for their, addressing the hearing, what should be in the hearing.
President Reckler, what page are you on?
I'm on 6 of my document. I should say like LR edits or something. Oh, it's the first one.
The first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to commend you. We've come a really long way with this committee, but for those of us who've been around for a while, they don't, parents certainly haven't always felt included and at the table. So whether it's here or whether it's in an administrative regulation, giving them an assurance that these things are gonna happen. There's also at the end, the last paragraph, which CSBA wanted to strike. I left in, which is the superintendent or designee shall seek and or accept technical assistance or other intervention that may be required pursuant to Ed Code 52071, 52072, or 20 USC, when the school or a numerically significant student subgroup is not making sufficient progress toward goals of the LCAP. I suggest you leave that in. Really for parents who've been asking for transparency. And it was in the original. I don't know the reason that they decided to strike it. So those are my comments, either in an administrative regulation or in the policy itself. And other than that, I think it's on the urgent side to do it.
There any other comments or questions I can work with you? I think as well, because it does, and then you're working well. Summer, sorry.
Comments or anything?
Yeah, thank you for working. We want to take public comment.
Sure. Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Oh, so on 0410, that's gonna go for first reading, pending no further legal review. 0460, will get re-looked at? Is that our? Ending on that,
Yes.
okay. Moving to 4111. Recruitment and selection. Okay, so my comment on 4111, 4211, and 4311 is the board updated 4211, recruitment and selection. Before the board updated 4211, 4111, and 4311, and 4211, they were all exactly the same, except that one was a 1, one was a 2, one was a 3. I never understood why only 4211 was updated and not the other ones. And so I guess I need to have that explained. If somebody knows.
I don't have that background information. We can gather that and share it back out with you.
Yeah.
And the question is, why was 4111 revised, but not 4121 and
So we
4131?
updated 4211,
Okay,
but at that time, 4111, 4211, and 4311 were all exactly the same. But I'm not sure why only one was updated.
Within this bundle? Or just in the
Back when
past?
we did it
Got
June 2024.
Got it.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Not sure.
So when you look at 4111 and 4311, you should, I think you should also look at 4211
Mhm.
to make sure that whatever the reason is that they don't. You know, the board, you know, just make sure that all of that is in sync.
Yeah.
okay. We can do
So
that.
that's my,
Another, so just to revisit, review that one
yeah, that's my comments on that.
before the first read.
Yeah, I think you should just check, you know, for just so that everything aligns. Is there comments on 4111? Or any questions? Other comment? Okay, 4131, staff development.
For this one, there's some language changing, some that become more specific and some that become less specific, given like, our current, post-COVID world. For example, where it talks about use of technologies, it's added language to say to enhance instruction and learning, including face-to-face, remote or hybrid, which weren't really a part of our reality, probably when this was last edited. Other cases, like right below that, it's less specific, I think, in an effort to be more inclusive. Removing the language of specifically English learners, economically disadvantaged students, and just to say diverse student populations, including but not limited to students with characteristics specified in, so it's outlined in ed code, as opposed to here in the board policy. Again, some specific language in effective classroom management, some changing of language, away from more, like things like discipline and promoting respect, fairness, and acceptance, right? Just a different perspective on how you maintain a healthy classroom. So those are six kind of the edits for this particular policy.
Did you see anything major in any of this rewording or anything?
I don't see anything major. Again, what I see is a shift in our ethos, as we've kind of changed our language in the way that we talk about professional development, and also just the way we talk about how we educate children.
Questions on it?
The only question I have is, for the new number 7 or the old number 7, hatred prevention.
Mhm.
I'm curious to why that was left, and if maybe you could explain what that means. I mean, I think I know what it means, but it seems opposite of what you're trying to. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Fleshman, your
Yeah.
department was trying to.
Right. Oh, why it stayed in and wasn't removed?
Or like change to like a positive, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think about like the No Place for Hate campaigns and things like that we've seen in recent years. And so I think, I hear what you're saying about, promoting love versus, suppressing hate or whatever the case, right? But I think that would have been connected to that sort of ethos of No Place for Hate and addressing and educating people on hate speech and things like that.
Thank you for that, that makes sense.
Any other questions on it?
Do these edits bring us up to speed? Is it match the suggested CSBA updates or are these locally edited?
All of these edits were made with CSBA
CSBA,
in
yeah.
mind, yeah.
Thank you.
Public comment on the item?
It's not public.
No public comment. So my comment on this is that it does take the CSBA, and I saw it as a rewording. I didn't see anything in here that was
Yeah.
a major, nothing screamed at me, so it's just, yeah. I didn't see anything here. I think we go for a first read. Yeah. Okay, so that can go for a first read too. Chipping down our mountain. Okay, moving on to 5144.1. Suspension and expulsion due process.
Minimal changes here as well, some ed code highlighting. Some language change around preschool. But again, not a major change in the functionality of the policy, just some little shading.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I did have a question, which is, does it align with our positive school climate work? Is there anything in here, is there anything from the positive school climate resolution in, regard to suspension or expulsions that needs to get worked in here in any way, shape or form? Or does the resolution and the policy align? Was the question I wanted to ask.
So I'm not certain if it was held up next to each other in the edits that were made. In reading the edits that are here, it's certainly in line with kind of the mission and the ethos of the positive school climate. There's, you see the language here where, it talks about the rights of someone who's in the disciplinary system and ensuring that they're still treated with dignity. So that is kind of in line with, again, moving away from draconian and old disciplinary practices to keep in mind that the EQs to have rights through the process.
And then around suspensions and expulsions, I think is more a question for you. In that positive school climate resolution, there were all sorts of things about what happens to students when they come back from suspension, when they, and I'm wondering where that lives. Yeah, like there were conferences and there were like all sorts of things in that resolution, so, I guess I'm just asking, how did that get codified into practice?
Does that exist in the parent-student handbook or even the principal's handbook, the draft that we're working from?
Of the climate resolution?
Yeah, well, the reentry of students following a
Can
suspension.
you look it up, because we brought the parent-student handbook in case things came up. Off the top, I don't think it exists there. I do think it's a protocol that we've trained principals on in principal meetings. And I think where it's done to most fidelity is reentry after a suspension for a fight. Because literally you have to resolve the conflict so that you don't have continued violence on this. I think it's a place we could audit as a system to see the fidelity to which we're doing it, that it is an expected practice and has been for the last several years.
So we should discuss how you want to handle that. And how those things get baked in practice.
I do
Um,
think the places where they should be, because they would be practice, would be the student parent handbook as well as the principal handbook. The principal handbook being more procedural, and for the student parent handbook of what to expect.
Right, these are rights or this is the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be
And
in
we
the
definitely
matrix,
can
like the disciplinary matrix thing, but because I think Ashanti has talked to us about it. And when it comes to the scope of the matrix. So I wonder if maybe that's another place to look.
And that is a
Yeah,
local tool.
As part of that resolution, there was the updating, the expansion or updating of the matrix, yeah.
Maybe that's good.
Yeah, so then where does that live to, you know, like, so, if, you know, like, if we're doing things and we think that they're good practices and we don't want them to die, I mean, that was, you know, we want them, the point is that if we think they're good, that everybody does them. And that they get written down somewhere so that people aren't like, oh my gosh, okay, what do I do now? You know, so.
And I know Summer's pulling up the matrix, but we've had ongoing conversations, for example, with CSAs in an effort to try to update the matrix to match behaviors that when we created it didn't exist. Like vaping, for example, is much more prevalent in our schools and it didn't mention it. And so I know that Christine Hatcher and her work with the CSAs plan had been collaborating with LaShante, and we were they were working on updating it, and, you know, upon the superintendent's review, and Summer, this happened before Summer came back from maternity leave, but it could come back and be updated.
I think that would be, again, these are practices that we're looking at.
And it's all living documents, you know, these things change over time and we have to
There's
be.
always something new that comes up, right? We have to
completely
stay
positive,
nimble.
We are not, it's not, you know. It's not stagnant business.
It is not codified in the discipline matrix, and to me, that's actually a very logical place for that practice to live. In the restoration, and I think the previous matrix may have had it, because it had like 3 pages of introduction. If we were to add that language to this revised or updated matrix, does it need to come to board, or is that something we can just publish?
All you,
Okay.
I think is there an AR with this? Do we know?
No, yeah.
So then we should just write something in here that says the superintendent is responsible for the creation and maintenance of a regulation around the implementation of policy or something like that.
But the regulation
There-
still is not gonna capture those things,
Or,
so it's the
so
implementation of.
what do you recommend?
I like the idea of it living in places that actually directly impact students, so the discipline matrix, parent student handbook, principal's handbook. I mean, if it may be a statement around an administrative regulation, but really where it's gonna have the impact is within our procedures. We could have a statement that
Procedures,
we have procedures.
how's that?
That we have procedures in place to support.
To support the board policy.
Let's first double
There-
check and find out if we have AR.
There's an AR for suspension expulsion. I'm reading through the draft right now to see if
5144.1.
point 2.
.2.
And it was in our edits from last time. It's not here today because it's an AR, but it was part of those 12 that we had.
So you double people up.
What was the number again, Kathy?
5144.2.
Yeah, so I'm looking within the assembly and it does say that there is an administrative regulation for 5.1 or 4.1.
Okay, so maybe you could work on a suitable sentence that we just put on the bottom of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll work on that. I keep going in and out. I'm gonna step out and
That's fine.
see if I actually need to pull it.
Okay.
Busy day.
Yeah, that was a busy day.
Busy day.
Okay, public comment?
There's no comment.
Okay, 6159.2, non-public, non-sectarian school and agency services for special education.
Again, board is, and the district recognize our responsibility to provide free and appropriate public education for all students with disabilities. In some cases, that means those students attend a non-public and non-sectarian school outside of our district. The language is not revolutionary or anything. It's not a
Yeah.
major change of the obligations that we have as a district. So if there's any questions, happy to answer them. There's a lot of language here about how we monitor the not credentialing, the licensing. And we do on-site visits of all schools that we send students to annually. And those schools that are outside of state, we have ways to get to send credentialed folks to review as well. So again, nothing substantial as far as the practice here or the policy. Just changes in wording.
Is there anything else you'd like to see in this in any way, shape, or form? Or?
I don't see any holes or gaps here. We talk a lot about NPSs and things like that, and the impact on our district and the impact on students. But as far as policy, I think this is sound.
Okay, yeah, to me, it looked like a major rewrite, and all of these other things, did they go to a administrative regulation, or did they just? Do you know?
Let's see.
I feel like a lot was taken out from this. I mean, I feel like it's a lot more concise, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering where all those other things went. There is an error, okay, so maybe I went there. I've seen them do that, where they just, really scale down the policy and put
Mhm.
everything else. Okay, that's fine. Public comment? No public comment, okay. Any other questions on this? So this can go for a first read, right? Yeah, okay, excellent, okay. Good. All right, so we're done with that. Okay, we're up to 6. You're calling it transgender expression, but I don't believe that's the real intent.
Yeah, it's really an update of the non-discrimination policy. And so if you open, I put our current policy, which is actually, thank you to Jose, very close to the CSBA. And I put the CSBA policy brief, but if you open the red line version, that has basically the combination. The difference between the CSB update and our current policy, oh, my red lines disappeared. I'm having a technical issue here. I can also share it with you guys. It was the end. The CSBA policy sample basically had an end that says regardless of whether a complainant complies, that's where it starts if you're looking on that document, because my color went away for some reason. But it gets deeper into the language of retaliation and the investigation. And then it basically talks about the follow-up in a deeper way. Where we were really strong in this policy, that we had already done was that we really defined gender identity. And so that was in the 2024 update. The only other small edit, was that under our list of protected groups, pregnancy or related condition was an addition, that we added in there.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, wasn't this the policy where I wanted a definition of harassment?
Yes.
Is there a definition of harassment in here?
And that may have been in a governance before I was back. I rewatched last governance is video. And I didn't hear that edit, but I'm reviewing to see if it's in there.
I thought we had already put it into the policy.
As I read it, I don't see it, but what I recommend and what I'd like to see, because this, as you heard me say before, this honestly came from my not knowing, like I really didn't know from reading it, what's the difference between bullying and harassment. Harassment is legally defined, and I think that we should define it so that we know what the difference is, so that if somebody is reading this, they know. So I know that there were discussions, and if I could search, I would find, I think we even went back to legal who looked at it. And Mr. Espinoza might be able to find it easier than me.
Yes, so currently I am working with legal on this policy, because we also have to update it due to, updating Title IX, information, and then as well for it to be in compliance with the FPM. So we did update language, we included the harassment and, the harassment, discrimination, unlawful discrimination language. We included the racialized harm language. We also were including language in regards to, suspensions, expulsions, within this policy. So I think there's a lot of updates that I think you should review. I can share that with you.
Yeah, let's follow up, because it looks like I took on an assignment from what I heard in the last meeting, and Jose took it on from a meeting before, so we can get together and break it back.
Okay. The other thing I would just mention is your area directors need some updating or should be updated. And I think I asked this before and I can't remember what the answer was. Is there a way to direct people to a website that you update instead of doing it in the policy? Because every time you change your areas or a person leaves or gets promoted, you have to come back to the policy and update it. Some body larger than us might want it directly in the policy, but if there's a way to save yourself some, updates that you need to do, pursue it. It's just a suggestion. And I don't have any other, I think, Mr. Espinoza got everything else that might,
So for that comment, were you requesting us to generalize who the concerns go to or who's identified within the policy?
well, it's really up to you, but what I'm trying to prevent, some of these people aren't here anymore. So if the policy is gonna be compliant, we really should bring it back to governance, strike those names, update the dates, bring it back to the board. I mean, it's just a whole process, but instead, if you were to say something like, our area directors are located in this link, and now the website is updated, and, you have the flexibility to change that whenever you need to, that's a lot faster than baking it into the document, so it's just all that.
So the reason why it's specifically within the board policy is because that's a requirement from CDE.
Well, there we go, so that's gonna go nowhere.
And then this does need to be updated already because the executive directors are no longer over section 504. So I was already working with Mr. Fleischman, and we've already have the correct contact information for those individuals. So we'll have to reflect that within this new update.
End of discussion, but we have friends up there, maybe we could do something. Okay, so any other feedback on that? Any public comment on it?
No.
All right, so we're done with that. And lactation accommodation, just, we need to have policy on this along with all of our other ones. Maybe we don't discuss it right now, but, it is a required. That's one of our requirements, and then we also I don't believe we don't have anything on the books, so maybe we could start there if we wanna just look at what, CSBA, yeah, why don't we, I know we don't have policy, I know it's required, why don't we just do it? So CSBA requires, lactation accommodation.
So I worked with our disability coordinators to make sure we looked at CSB sample and created a policy for lactation accommodation based on their verbiage and what we do in the district currently. So the key legislative context is making sure we follow the federal Pump Act. And so this is what we came up with based upon that documentation and work we already do in the district.
So the one we should be looking at is we should not be looking at the sample, we should be looking at the other one.
Yes. Which I took basically from the sample, but I'm sure they'll be compliant with what we do in the district and the legislative context.
May I ask, what is FLSA?
That is the fact sheets. Just talking about some of the rules about spaces and what's acceptable and not acceptable as far as space usage for pumping.
So I personally like, if we go back to the CSBA recommendations, I like the list on their page 3, I think. It has the list of, it starts with the employee shall be provided a lactation space. You see that part? And it has like a list of 5 things underneath. I actually like how detailed that is. And I wanted to actually recommend to add 3 additional ones. So I think that the more detailed, the better, just so that there's no inconsistencies at sites that could lead to discrimination. So apart from those 5, I wanted to recommend that signage will be available for the educator to use to put on the door. Number 7, the teacher shall be provided with a key of the space so that they may lock it when it's being used. And number 8, that they will be provided with cleaning supplies to clean the space after every use. Because usually it's a space that it's used by more than one person, not always, right? It could be like just a classroom that no one uses, right? But so that it's clean for that person to use, to put their stuff. It could just be wipes, right?
Okay.
But I would like to add those 3 things to that.
I also think there needs to be an AR with this, and I put in red all the potential things that could go in an AR. Purpose of scope, how do you request? With scheduling, if there's multiple people, like how does that work? Are there break time guidelines? Space specifications, I think were pretty much spelled out, but I was wondering, maybe because it's in the law, maybe it needs to be in the policy. I didn't really know, but I thought like the type of space was important.
And that's what I was having difficulty separating it out.
Yeah.
I think more defining more in AR than versus the board policy.
Exceptions and denial process, if such a thing needed to happen there.
Yeah.
How does it get distributed? Like, how do people know you're coming back from maternity leave? Do you get a sheet of paper? Do you get how does that get
So I
done?
can definitely flesh it out more. And I did see that.
Non-retaliation assurance, complaint and dispute resolution, if there's any record keeping that needs to happen, like all of that type of stuff. I don't think that goes in the policy, but I think those are things that could go into a regulation or a procedure, so,
I think some of them, know, like non-retaliation.
yeah, yeah, certainly no
That's
retaliation, yeah.
right.
But those are just some things I thought of, like, not, like, his policy was kind of. It's fine, we have to have one, I just kind of scratching my head myself, like, why is this not policy, why isn't it in a regulation, but, but that's for discussion, and yeah, we need to have it, and it's a good thing, and. Yeah,
And I think in addition, I would also like to add one piece that we can have discussion around, of course. But I think California does the minimum when it comes to lactation accommodations, including that a mother needs to. By the way, this is not our practice, so I want to make it clear that we don't deny currently, I don't believe. Maybe I correct if I'm wrong, sorry, Dr. Greenwood. We don't deny breaks outside of your break time, but technically state law says that a mom may only express milk during their break times, which kind of fits within the CSBA policy and really the recommendation as well today. I want to be able to provide paid time outside of break times for anyone that needs it, just because as I will never know, but I've seen from others, including my own wife, expressing milk can happen anytime, right? So if that happens, that mother is able to make that request of the principal, right? And then they're provided with that time, but it's not deducted from their sick time or it's not deducted from their pay, right? It's technically unpaid. So I do have an interest in putting it into the policy that it can be within paid time to be relieved for the break. And I understand why it's here because we're just writing what state law says. But I think that for our district, I want to set the precedent that, and I think some districts do this already. But for us, that we wouldn't deny anyone from being able to do that.
I know we have,
I'm sorry?
as far as I know, we haven't.
And we haven't. No, I'm saying in practice, we're not, but I don't want it to be set in policy. Because technically, if someone wants to say something because they don't like how many breaks that person gets, right? Technically, our policy states differently, right? Or would state differently if we pass it as said.
And I think we need to, I think that may be coming into the AR because like we just had a recent case, for example. Where the person reached out to our disability coordinator. She went actually to the site, made sure the room was available, made sure everything was set up. And so I think that's part of the stuff that's missing, that people haven't been reaching out to HR to make sure that it's feasible for all parties at this point. So, and then they're just reaching out to the principal, and then that is what you're talking about happens. Oh, no, I can't. I don't want you taking all of these breaks. I don't want you, it's taking up too much time, but if we're involved in it and to make sure, and we have the board policy and we have the ARs done, then we can alleviate some of the confusion or whatever happens at some of the sites. No, this is what happens and needs to, I think if that's part of the process, that they reach out to us and we can support what happens at the site to make sure the rooms are available, make sure the time is available. And then it can't happen like that. And so everything went smooth, person met with the principal, this needs to happen. And it's set up and it's done.
Yeah.
So appropriately,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. So I think we were just missing that middle person to support the needs of the sites and not letting the sites do it on their own.
Yep. This is good.
any other question? Yeah.
Also wanted to add that this is also on our list to update for Title IX. So I just want to make sure if you work on it with legal.
Yeah.
So that we can get those appropriate updates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the language we're looking for really is that the person returning to work shares a schedule of when they need the breaks, because you do have a sense, right? You know the times, and so you can share a draft schedule. And then obviously if something shifts, update it with the principal.
And I have somebody that will be returning in my office, so I'm already preparing a room and making availability, that like you're saying, that it's clean, appropriate. If I have to put, paper on the, on the glass, so I'm already in my mind, even before this came up, to make sure that it's prepared for that employee.
But I think that you are going above and beyond,
Mhm.
and I've seen instances where that doesn't happen in our system, right? I have not seen instances where people get deducted pay, right, or heard of that, thankfully.
Right,
But, I have seen instances where an employee gets given, you know, like an office that is used by 3 other people, like shared by the council and the vice principal, right? And then they're not provided all the things that we just talked about, right? So I think that once it's written here or in the AR, then I think that this also has to be an educational piece with principals who will be the ones in charge of obviously accommodating the employees, right? Hopefully with a conversation with HR. But I do want to be explicit if we can, either on the policy or in the AR about these concerns.
It should be a conversation with both HR and facilities in terms of
Yeah,
location and space.
yeah.
In addition, a schedule I think would be helpful. I have concerns about anytime. Because it does, I mean, walking out of your classroom requires an adult to be in the room with, a certificated adult to be in the room with students. And so I think a schedule, that's why I think it's written in as during break time. But I would be cautious to say, any time you want to. And as a long time ago nursing mother, I understand the concerns and the challenges around it, but it's also, once. I'm not gonna talk about the science of it all, but once you're back, I think you do have a better idea
Yeah.
after some time, you do have a better idea of the schedule.
The problem is that I think that breaks are scheduled by the site calendar, right? So I think that especially if you need more than the 10 minutes you get that day or the 20 minutes, right? This policy specifically says any additional break time used by the non-exempt employee for this purpose shall be unpaid. I do want it to say paid. Now, whether
I
we
think that
can,
would be confusing.
whether that.
Shall not be penalized, something to
Yeah,
that effect.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be an extra pay, because that
pay or
is how
leave
it
shall
would
not be
be.
deducted. Like, we don't have to say paid, but I think we have to be explicit on the consequence. Of the,
They're
I-
not putting in e-school for 30 minutes.
Right, I think
Yes.
sharing that with, when you sit down with the attorneys, I think
They can
to
create
share
that
that and
yeah.
talk about language that would, again, be supportive, making sure that they're not deducted pay. And that they have an appropriate space and all of that. If you can add that to the conversation, please.
Thank you. Sounds good. That makes sense.
Okay, so that'll come back to governance. Yeah, breastfeeding is a full-time job on top of everything else, so. And I recognize challenges of implementing this at a school site. It's very different if you're in an office. You know, but schools have a lot of moving parts, so. Challenge. Okay, so we gave feedback on that. Public comment? Community requests. I'm aware of 3. One is to adopt a business utilization policy. One is to expand options to complete physical education requirements. And the third is climate literacy resolution policy. Can we start with the climate literacy resolution? If we can do that first, since there are students that have been waiting years.
Absolutely, we can. So what we have attached here for you is both the CSBA sample with notes for environmental education, and we went ahead and attached our environmental education current policy for Lake Costa. Last time that this was updated was 2007, so we could take the opportunity to update it now. And we did have, I believe, as a student trustee, that brought forward a climate literacy resolution that didn't see the light of day just yet, but here it is. And I did invite John Iwawaki, our coordinator of science and engineering, should there be questions, and to allow him to speak to currently what is occurring at all levels in terms of environmental education. So maybe we can start there to talk about what is happening currently in our schools, both in terms of courses being offered, but also outside of courses, what student groups and projects are happening across the district. And then we can talk more specifically about any policy changes we want to see, the resolution, and or if there's any questions. So welcome, John. You can talk to us.
Hi, everybody. How much time do I have? I'll be quick. So I would just say, like, tier one, generally speaking, across the system, that California has created what are called the environmental principles and concepts. And all of those are basically ideas around how humans are interacting with the climate and climate change is happening and those kinds of things. Those principles are integrated into all of the state standards and the way that the state science standards are bundled together into courses. So, you know, there's volcanoes and cells and forces and everything, but in all of those things, there are environmental principles and concepts embedded into that. We have new curriculum at every level, at elementary, middle, and high, all adopted in the last 5 years. And all of those curricula are required to follow NGSS and have those EPCs, environmental principles and concepts, embedded into them. So I would just start there. They exist. And even if I go, if we zoom out to the national standards, the NGSS, Next Generation Science Standards, the Earth Science Standards include threads of human impact on the environment and climate change from K to 12, spiraling all the way through. So that just exists in all of our science classes. Further, in high school, we've traditionally not consistently offered earth science in high school. We offer physics, chemistry, and biology traditionally, but the state offers a bundling of physics, biology, and chemistry that includes earth science each year. So you may have seen those course titles change in the last few years. So it's not called biology anymore. It's called Biology, the Living Earth. It's got earth standards integrated. It's physics of the universe. It's got earth and space science integrated. It's chemistry in the earth system. It's got the earth science standards integrated in. So that's how we bundle the standards in our high schools as well. Then we also offer AP environmental science at 3 of our high schools at Kennedy, Richmond, and El Cerrito. All offer AP environmental science, APES, as it's commonly known. There are a few, that's where we are in terms of like curriculum and courses. But there are many other things that I can just hit quickly. Maybe you've heard of the Richmond Outdoors Coalition, but we have the ROC. We're partnering with the Richmond Outdoors Coalition, specifically targeting 4 schools, Nystrom, Verde, Dijon, and Richmond High. Every student at Nystrom and Verde, they have at least 1 outdoor study trip, every kid, every grade, every year. And that's funded through grants with the ROC and partnerships with several community groups. They also have outdoor programming during the day. Lots more to say about that. We also partner with Community Resources for Science, which is a community partner in Berkeley, and they work with literally hundreds of elementary teachers, and their focus is on environmental literacy and climate justice. And so that's woven into their PDs, into the lessons that they provide teachers, and the events that they hold, both their own events and events that they hold here at our sites. There are also gardens all across the district. Almost every school has a garden. We often have a partner working with a teacher and the site there. And I'm happy to share more information about that as well. We've had interactions with Veolia wastewater, if you're familiar with that, out kind of past Point Richmond, out that way. The Richmond High Engineering has done a field trip out there, as has Washington Elementary has gone out there. And they have come to Kennedy High, and their scientists have worked with environmental science classes there. And then we've got clubs all around the district. And probably the most famous one is called the Escape Club at Dijon and Soskin. We've been going for 25 years. And they have outdoor study trips, monthly Saturday study trips for the last 25 years. What other questions can I answer? That's the quick rundown of what's going on.
So I think, thank you for sharing that. We've got, we stand committed to that resolution, and we agree that as a district, we want to ensure that, we are in a climate emergency, right? And our curriculum does reflect that. We also want to make sure that we're giving ample opportunity for all of our students to be exposed. I believe the student that brought this resolution forward is still in our district. Yeah, so I commend them for bringing this forward. One wondering I have is, towards the end, the commitments made. Certainly, we agree with educating our students. We agree that the board policy needs to be updated, so 2017 to 2007 to 2021 to reflect the changes that we've already made in curriculum and policy. There's also the ask for our superintendent to establish an environmental literacy working group.
This is I think the big one for them.
And so in terms of time and commitment and capacity of staff, I'd want to make sure that we're very lucky to have John, who is really dedicated, and we're lean, as you could say. So I would caution us to commit to additional working groups unless our superintendent and or our board directs us to.
Yeah, so I think and I don't want to speak for them, but through my conversations, it's number 4, the establishment of the environmental literacy working group, which I think they're the most passionate about.
Yeah.
And number 5, which is the commitments involved in that. So that's I think the big one there.
Yeah. Any questions or comments? We're lucky to have John here with us.
So, you could go.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing everything you shared. I actually learned about a few things. I guess just my question is what should we be looking at specifically to move forward? Is it the red line version?
Yeah.
And then I understand obviously what the students want to do.
Yeah.
And I definitely commend them, but I think number 4 is gonna be like a huge request.
Yeah.
That competes with I think a few other priorities that we're trying to do. So obviously, even just providing professional development to our teachers, you can imagine it's like a big lift. Not to say that we don't need it, right? But I think maybe that can just be something that gets tabled while we take in consideration everything else, right?
Yeah, and we do offer quite a bit of professional development.
As a reminder, classes are started, all students need to be out of the hallway in class. Again, all students need to be in class at this moment. Thank you.
I would add also that CRS, Community Resources for Science, they really emphasize environmental literacy and climate justice. It's just woven into everything that they do and touch, and they've been a great partner for many years.
Absolutely.
I just want to also lift up that number 4 has a fiscal impact
Yes.
that the
I know.
board would need to consider.
Yes.
It says a funded coalition, and
Yes.
never seen that, so I'm more interested in fleshing out what that means.
So I think one way that we could stand for commitment could be to update this policy that hasn't been updated since 2007. And so the document that we would be looking at would be that second column, the middle one that has the tracked changes from 2021 versus 2007. That would bring us up to date to the CSBA suggested language. and would, better represent what we're actually doing in practice in the district, which is very aligned to, what we should be presenting in terms of science and climate change to our students.
Yeah. Should we take public comment?
Yep, sure.
Do you have a public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay, so final comments. I'm fine with the policy updated. I also want to thank you for your work. I
Yay.
mean, there's so much going on. There's a lot going on. It's really cool, and if we can get to it, that should be highlighted out there. Get the Richmond side out there. I think they did go out. They talked with someone, but they should talk with one of our partners that does science-based, you know. They do a good job at that, and they've got the long format, so they could like really talk about some of the cool things. Anyway, thanks.
We'll definitely make sure to spotlight it in Friday memos so that, it's open to our community and our board to see the amazing work that.
Yeah,
John is
there's like
leading.
there's
It's
some really cool
amazing.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, so now I'll take off my reporter marketing hat. So I think that could, I'm fine with what's there. I think we can get pushed forward. The question is, who wants to contact the students? Or do you want to discuss more in 4 and 5, or do you want to just hold at this point? Or,
I
I
think
mean-
that the students, maybe there could be a conversation between Ed Services, John, and the students, and explain to them what we have, because a lot of it is already in existence from what we just
Yeah,
heard,
yeah.
right?
I
So,
mean,
and we don't have to commit additional funding that we don't necessarily have right now, development of something, so maybe it's about sharing with them, like, the update of like, yes, we wanna, you know, be thoughtful, updating our policy, and we wanna share with you why some of the areas were not included.
Mhm.
And it's, and part of it is because they already exist, and we just wanna share that with you, so maybe they could take the initiative of meeting with, I think it's Elena and I forgot.
Yeah. yeah, Luke, yeah, we can get all those contacts, but some of this is already done, is within the framework and the structure. I
Right,
mean,
that's right.
to develop a comprehensive climate literacy curriculum, all new curriculum has been adopted, that's already within the system.
Mhm.
The system does that. You know, there's already standards, you know, so so a lot of that is already kind of taken care of, maybe not the way that they're envisioning it, but, you know, that already happens.
Right.
Um,
That makes sense.
right, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe I can give you the contacts, or
Yeah.
I'll send them to the superintendent.
Yeah.
and I can go
And
on.
our team will work with our superintendent to meet with the students. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so I think that can go forward.
That's great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
okay, so we're up to meeting dates, and we have to change October.
Yep.
Okay, so October, what do we want to do about?
Present
October?
You got a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you want to discuss the other community item around,
Oh,
education requirements?
sorry. Yes, thank you. I'm like, all right, that's it.
I can be quick. I have an update for you.
Okay,
Great. So I just wanted to, for the benefit of the group, name that this is actually a policy that was updated in 2023. So we're not so behind on this one. At the time, the board in 2023, this was in August, added to the policy to include JROTC and marching band and participation outside of school-sponsored marching band of the school date, so that it could also be counted as PE credit. The Ed Code actually does extend the board to approve cheerleading and drill team. That wasn't included in that policy. So the policy does allow for a waiver or extension for students to not have to take those required PE courses. I went back and studied the notes of the alignment team meeting that happened after this adoption in 2024. In fact, Summer was there, but as an executive director, this was led with CAO Sonia Neely Johnson, and several of the college and career and ed services directors were there. This meeting is a cross-departmental meeting that takes both, it does course alignment, but really because this is about courses, it took into account the things that we would have to do on the Power School end to give credit. So Kim Chamberlain was there. And essentially the group created a procedure for how we would go about this. The intention is that this procedure then is shared through our handbooks, both for our families, so during the parent-student handbook and during the principal handbook for our principals to know the process. The handbook has not been published, the principal handbook, in a couple of years, and with our superintendent's blessing, we are putting it back together. It's been reviewed by cabinet. It does include the procedure for how to do this. Currently, WCCA and principals are reviewing it, and so it will be shared widely how it is that sites can go about exempting students, right, or getting credit for these things that our board adopted in 2023. And we would then more widely share it with our families to be able to know how to do this.
Would we be allowed to also, I think this came back because of a request that we got about adding dance as part of the requirements. Would the law allow us to do that?
So the ed code does allow us to include JROTC, marching band, cheerleading, and drill teams. And so I think dance could fall within that realm. When it was updated in 2023, only JROTC and marching band were included, so we'd need to adapt the language to be a bit wider, but again,
That
the
was the
intent is
request.
to allow students the flexibility to take other courses, and so
Right.
should the superintendent tell me that that's how we want to move, we could
I
certainly
think
do that.
we should do a check-in with CDE.
Yeah.
To ensure that that would be acceptable.
And the practice in the system, at least when I was a principal, has been you put children in dance instead of PE. It's always been the counselors can go in, it's always offered a variable credit,
Oh, really?
but they have to take the PFT. And so you'll get an FPM finding if they don't take the PFT. And so freshmen or sophomores who fall under that requirement have to be excused from dance to go take that test with the PE classes.
And that is in our procedure as well.
With the cat,
I would just double check.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as part of, I went ahead and pulled up the sample from CSBA for both the policy and the AR, and the note here does state that ed code does allow dance and cheerleading, but I will just double check to be sure. And if, we want to expand it to be inclusive, we certainly could.
I don't have a problem adding dance, but I think that it should definitely, I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that
for sure.
that's in place, and then our policies currently, our practices currently.
Are matching.
Exactly. And so,
to your point though about the dance class and the dance teacher, that dance teacher has to also have a valid PE credential, correct?
I think that's the gray area, because if they take the PFT, does that credential, that's what gets the class in like the UC portal, when we put that class in, it can offer either credit.
Right.
So where is that interplay, and does it matter? Or does it have to be board policy? I think that's the loop that has to be closed.
so I can find out about that.
Yeah, and dance teachers don't require a PE credential anymore.
Many
However,
have it.
right, but that's not required anymore.
Okay.
The concern though is, again, goes back to, does the student taking that course with that person with that credential meet their physical fitness requirement?
And so what we have approved thus far, we will move forward in terms of it being reviewed. And then should we want to make an edit to the policy, then later we can consider whether cheerleading, drill team, or dance can be added.
Okay, yeah, and so for me, it's a customer service issue. We heard you, we finally reviewed it. Like, I can either communicate back, because I think it came to us, or you can, just like, what is our plan and when's our next touch on that is, because as you know, many people, what do we always hear? No one responds to me.
Yes.
Whether you are or you're not, at least I know that, you know, I did it. So,
Well, you can always forward them to me because I haven't gotten any questions about this yet. But we, like I said, we're currently reviewing our principal handbook with WCCAA and just making sure that everything is captured, and that should be published within the next couple of weeks. And so we'll be sure to update this parent-student handbook so it can be widely known that this is an option.
Forward it to me. and we'll
There
make
you
sure
go.
and get it to Kathy.
perfect.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
But just to confirm, after we check with city and all that, it would have to come back to us,
Yes.
right?
It would,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Just to update it also.
Mhm.
Okay, good, great. And then the business, adopt a business utilization policy. Oh, gosh, all right.
And I do have to close.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to table it? Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm so
that's
sorry.
fine.
I'm whispering.
You know what?
I do have a
Okay.
separate stuff.
Are you
Do you
okay?
want, do you want?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I can do is, since we already have a policy that we're implementing in collaboration with our PLA, in our Friday memo, I'll share our current local hire numbers for all our projects, because it's all good news.
Okay, oh, good.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
Absolutely. And
Do
then
you
I'm
think-
happy to come back to the next meeting to answer more questions.
Okay, great. Public comments on any of that? Yeah, we need to schedule the next meeting. And then do 5 minutes?
Yes,
After
yes,
this?
schedule
Okay. Okay. No public comment, okay. Upcoming meeting dates, we need to change October, if we could just align. And let's start with you, Dr. Stewart.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the conflict is with me. I could do the 24th, like the following week.
Does anybody have an issue with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to.
You trust.
You guys are very robust conversation.
Well, what about,
Right.
what about the
What's the
23rd, day before, the Thursday?
It's the same. It's 2 days with CTC.
Oh. What about that Tuesday, the 21st? That week, apparently I have nothing. So I could do that Tuesday.
We do it in the morning and that would, the wipes are one-to-ones. We could definitely do it in the morning.
Yeah, just tell me, I'll move what I have.
Okay.
21st?
21st? Ready to go?
And for this, for cabinet, if we can shift things over to the 22nd, Rosa, can we schedule our one-to-one?
Thank you everyone for your work on.
And seeing nothing further. Adjourn at 12:03. Thank you, that was great.
Thank you.
Very productive.
You should have a message in your email. Rochelle, they have a message in their email? Do they have a message in their email? In less than 60 seconds. I don't know why I was running in and out.
All right.
Got it.